We're going to be learning Parsha Shlach, the commentary of the Ohr Hachaim HaKadosh, the Holy Ohr Hachaim, and we're going to learn the portion of Tzitzis. Tzitzis is right at the end of this week's portion, and everyone knows the Tzitzis, the mitzvah of a man wearing a four-cornered garment that has strings hanging from it. And what is the meaning behind Tzitzis? And as the Ohr Hachaim always does, he finds different grammatical little points in the verse. I shouldn't say little. He finds different grammatical changes in the verses, and he finds them to be hinting to some deeper insights from midrashic sources or Talmudic sources, and he finds them to be hinting to these, alluding to these ideas. And the portion of the Tzitzis is read every single day when we say the Shema. We say it in the morning, we say it at night. All three portions are recited. At least men are obligated to say the Shema before 3 hours into the day. So certain times of the year, it fluctuates what time that is. Today's in a day like today, where sunrise is around 6:30, so 3 hours into the day is approximately 9:40, maybe 9:40 in that ballpark. Of course, people who daven at the 6:30 minyan, they don't have to worry about the time that Shema is, because they're catching it right in the beginning. But for those that sleep in, it's good to know. And there's calendars that have the exact times, and of course it fluctuates, because today sunrise is around 6:30. In the winter, sunrise could be more like 7:15. So then you would have much a later time to say the Shema. Now, so in the Shema is 3 paragraphs, and the third paragraph is this Vayomer paragraph that's in this week's Torah portion. It's the last paragraph of the Torah portion this week. Yes, David?
I think it's important to mention that men, one of the reasons that women are not obligated is because men need that external thing of tzitzis to remind them of the mitzvahs, and women are supposed to be on a higher level, that they don't need tzitzis, they don't need yarmulke, they don't need tefillin, besides the fact that they're not obligated and time-oriented. But besides that, they don't need those external reminders of the mitzvahs.
Right. Don't rub it in too much to the men. Men here,
no,
listening.
I'm helping the women appreciate what we're learning. So they should just shut off the class for today.
Okay. Yes, women are spiritually more connected. Okay, yeah, thank you, David, for telling us, sharing that. Very good point, David. Susan, I see your hand is up. Susan, did you want to ask something? It's you're muted, so you got to unmute if you want to say something. Looks like your hand is up, but I don't know. Okay, guess not. Okay. Well, let's continue then. So, why do I hear noise? I hear noise. So maybe Bruce's background, I think. Okay. I think it's your background, Bruce. Okay, well, just stay muted unless you want to speak. And Susan says she can't unmute. Okay. All right. Well, so the portion of the Tzitzis, it's connected really to the little paragraph that's before it. And so I should just mention, in the Torah portion this week, so we have the last portion is about Tzitzis, but right before it comes a story. And the story is about a person who gathered wood on Shabbos. And they found him gathering the wood, and they brought him to Moses and Aaron. And they placed him, it says, in some type of a mishmar, like custody. They put him in prison because they didn't know what to do to him. And they knew that a person who transgresses Shabbos is punishable by death, but they didn't know which death penalty it is. There's 4 death penalties in Jewish law. And so the story is, so he transgressed the Shabbos, and Hashem hadn't told us exactly which death penalty is for transgressing Shabbos. So Moses asked Hashem. It says Hashem said to Moshe that he should get the punishment of stoning. And so they did that outside the camp, and he died. Now, obviously, he was warned, and the purpose that he did it was, it's a whole very, there's really a depth to the story that he was trying to, he knew he was going to get killed, and he did it in order to teach people that, that they should make sure to keep the Shabbos. And so he sort of gave up his life in order to be a lesson for other people. A very interesting story on its own, and sad story, but nevertheless, that is a story, and that story continues because that man had 5 daughters, and those 5 daughters end up later on, after he dies, and they want a portion in the land of Israel, and there's no sons. And so the story of this person who, in a certain sense, sinned by transgressing Shabbos. On the other hand, you could say he was making a example in order to teach a lesson to the people. So you could say he did it as a way of teaching. But in the end, his daughters were orphans, and they wanted a portion in the world to come. In the world to come, they wanted a portion in Israel, and ultimately they were given a portion in Israel. And they were considered chochmaniyos. They were very smart girls, and they came up to Moses with a good, a real logical claim, saying, if we're considered children, then give us a portion. If we're not considered children, then our mother should be able to do the levirate marriage called yibum, where she should marry the brother of the deceased, because if we're not called children, so they came up with this logical claim to Moses. So they were called chochmaniyos, smart. They were considered very smart girls, these 5 girls, and they had an issue of also when they get married, that their portion, there was an issue that if they, there was an additional issue. They have a portion in the land, but then when they get married to another man, that portion is going to now switch to another tribe. So that was an additional issue that came up, and to get around that problem, it says that they were obligated in that generation to only marry within their tribe, even though we're all Jewish. All the tribes are, of course, Jewish. Nevertheless, at that time, we weren't even allowed to have intertribal marriages, and they all married men from the tribe of Menashe. That was the tribe they're from. Anyway, so that's the story before this, and that leads us into the mitzvah of tzitzis. And I'm mentioning this because it's important for you to know. You'll see the Ohr Hachaim is going to connect it to the connection between the mitzvah of tzitzis, wearing the garment of tzitzis, and the story about before with keeping Shabbos, or the law of keeping Shabbos, and so on. Susan, now that you can unmute, would you like to?
Yes, my question is the time that you daven. Why is that so exact and so important?
Good question. So in the Shema, it says that when people lie down and when people rise, that's when you should love Hashem your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. These words I command you today shall be upon your heart. You shall teach them thoroughly to your children. You speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk on the road, when you lie down, and when you rise. So that time is what we're trying to fulfill. That it says you should speak of them when you rise. When do people rise? People rise the first 3 hours of the day. When do people lie down is a topic of discussion in the Talmud. And does it go by when they start lying down, when they're sleeping, and so on? But basically, it would be that when it's dark. Once it's dark out, that's the time to say the Shema.
But the third, but the middle davening, how do you?
That doesn't have a Shema. There's no Shema in the Mincha, in the afternoon prayer. That prayer doesn't have a Shema in it. So, okay, so now we're learning about Tzitzis. And the verse says, if any of you have a Chumash in front of you, it's in chapter 15. And we're in verse 37, verse 37, 38, and there's a few verses to this paragraph. Basically ends at 41. So from 37 to 41, these are the verses about tzitzis. And the verse says that Hashem tells Moshe, saying, speak to the Bnei Yisrael and tell them that they should make tzitzis on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and they shall place on the tzitzis hakanaf, they should place on the fringes of the corner a thread of techelas. Anyone know what techelas is? Techelas is a very expensive color for wool garments. It was a type of blue that was they would use the blood of an animal of some type of a fish or some type of maybe what would you call it? Not an actual fish that swims in the ocean, but some type of crab or some type of a fish
a crustacean.
What would you call it?
A crustacean.
Crustacean.
Okay. Yeah, it's like a crab, a shrimp.
Yeah, something like that. So okay, and the blue ink was a very unique ink, very hard to get to the extent that we don't even know what animal, what fish, what creature it was from. And so there's a big debate if they've even found that. They've done a lot of research to try to find it. After the second temple, sometime afterwards, it became forgotten. We are unknown which creature it's supposed to come from, and so we no longer have this blue thread. Once in a while, you will find, if you in some shuls, you'll find one person has like a blue thread on their tzitzis. That's rare, but it happens, and that is because that person, whoever has that, is following a view that they think they found it. They think they figured it out, but it definitely has been missing for many generations to know exactly what it is. And most people, the vast majority of people, do not wear any blue, even though the mitzvah is to include blue, as it says in verse 39, that you're supposed to have a thread of techelas. And even then, it's a little questionable how much of the thread is supposed to be techelas. Is it 1 out of the 8 threads, or is it 2 out of the 8 threads? Because there's a discussion how many, or is it 4 out of the 8 threads? There's a discussion of how many of the threads are meant to be this blue. But in any event, in today's day and age, the vast majority of people do not wear the blue. They wear only the white tzitzis without the blue color, without this special color of the techelas. Now, we haven't gotten yet to the Ohr Hachaim. I'm just making sure you got the context over here, the background. So the mitzvah of tzitzis, now the way it's written is, it doesn't say Vayedaber Hashem al Moshe Lemor. That's the most common sentence in the Torah. Vayedaber Hashem, and Hashem spoke to Moses, saying. It says it numerous times. I've never calculated how many, but it's definitely a very large number of the mitzvahs, or all have that statement. Hashem spoke to Moses, saying. This one does not say Vayedaber. It says Vayomer Hashem al Moshe Lemor. And Hashem said to Moshe. Instead of Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, it's Hashem said to Moshe saying. Now, in the Hebrew, the word Vayomer really refers to more of a soft way of speaking, while Vayadaber is more firm, command, more strict, more gevura, with strength. Vayomer is more soft. And so here, when it comes to Tzitzis, interestingly enough, the paragraph of Tzitzis, and we say it in the Shema every day. We never think about this, but it actually is different than the normal the normal introduction of a command is normally Vayadaber Hashem al Moshe Lemar, and here it's Vayomer Hashem al Moshe. So that is one of the questions that the Ohr Hachaim wants to understand. Why is this portion different than all other portions?
Rabbi, is it a command or a request?
Well, that's a good question. And the reason, let me mute. Okay. The reason I say it's a good question is because the mitzvah of tzitzis is an interesting mitzvah. It's a mitzvah that, on the one hand, if you have a four-cornered garment, it's a command. If you're wearing a four-cornered garment, you're commanded to put tzitzis on it. But you're not obligated to wear a four-cornered garment. You could get away with wearing some type of a rounded garment, and you would not be obligated. So is it a command? It depends, really. If you're wearing a four-cornered garment, it's a command. If you're not, it's not a command. But even if you're not wearing a four-cornered garment, I don't want to say it's totally not a command, because the Talmud says in Menachos, the Talmud says that when the time that Hashem is angry, or at the time that there's anger, it says Hashem punishes those that don't chase after positive commandments, meaning that you're not obligated to go and get tzitzis and get a four-cornered garment and put tzitzis on it and have your tzitzis. You're not obligated really to do that. You could just wear rounded garments. But if there's anger, in a heavenly anger, it would, that anger, if you're at that time, during that time of either of the day, or if there's ever such a moment, guess who's going to get punished? The person who doesn't run after getting a four-cornered garment with tzitzis. So is it a command? Not really. You're not obligated to, but there's a question, why are you not running to do it? Even though it's not a command, you should still run to do it. And so does it sounds to me like we could call it a command, even if you don't have a four-cornered garment, because if someone could get sort of like punished for it, then it's,
couldn't it be just a way of showing your love of Hashem?
Say that again.
Couldn't it be a way of showing your love of Hashem to wear the tzitzis?
Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, you're wondering if it's an obligation, a commandment. In other words, is it a means of fulfilling a mitzvah? It's a great opportunity to do a mitzvah, for sure. But is it a command? In truth, you could get away without. You're not getting punished for transgressing commandment, but the fact is,
but it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea to do that. It's
not a good idea not to.
Right. Is it being disrespectful?
Well, not being disrespectful, but it's not running after an opportunity that you should be running after. This is an opportunity to do a mitzvah, and why didn't you run after it? So under normal circumstances, you don't get punished for such a thing, but because it's not a full-fledged obligation. If it was a full-fledged obligation, then there would be even a punishment maybe for not going after it. Like, for example, if a person doesn't wear tefillin, that's a much more serious punishment than a person who doesn't run after tzitzis. A man is supposed to wear tefillin every day. That's a biblical obligation. The obligation of tzitzis is much less significant because it's not an obligation. It's a, if you're wearing a four-cornered garment, then you have to wear tzitzis. If you're not wearing a four-cornered garment, you wouldn't need to wear tzitzis. So if you're wearing a pair of pants, there's no obligation of tzitzis on your pants. If you're wearing a shirt, most shirts are not exactly four corners. And because they're not really four-cornered, they're rounded off, so to speak, and they button, and it doesn't end up being considered a four-cornered garment. You don't wear tzitzis on your shirt. If a person was wearing a towel, then that, as a garment, that would be they would be obligated in tzitzis, and that would be a biblical obligation if the person was wearing that. But if they're not wearing it, they are not obligated. That's different than tefillin. Tefillin, a person is obligated to put on tefillin no matter what they're wearing. They should wear tefillin every day, even just for a minute. Put it on and you fulfill the mitzvah, and you take it off. But or say the Shema with it. That ideally, of course, it should be. You should say the Shema with it, and maybe and daven the morning prayers. But at least put it on for a minute, 2 minutes, and then take it off. But the mitzvah of tzitzis is not that same level of obligation, but it is an opportunity to run after a positive opportunity to do a positive mitzvah. Okay, so here we're talking about why the verse does not start the usual Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe Lemar. Instead, it says Vayomer Hashem el Moshe Lemar. And I just mentioned that Vayomer symbolizes more of a soft language, and Vayedaber more strict and more gvura, more severe type of a very firm type of speech. So so it makes it different than almost all other commands. And the Ohr Hachaim wants to say that this might hint to a medrash. The medrash says that when Moshe saw the previous paragraph in the Torah, and the previous paragraph in the Torah was about the laws of Shabbos, where someone transgressed the laws of Shabbos. So when Moshe saw this episode about the person gathering the wood, he said before Hashem, this is a medrash, this Moshe Rabbeinu said to Hashem, he said before Hashem, on the weekdays, the Yidden wear tefillin, and they remember to do the mitzvahs. On Shabbos, how are we going to remember to do the mitzvahs? This is a statement Moshe asked Hashem, and Hashem answered him and said, I'm going to give you the mitzvah of tzitzis and you'll remember. Now, the statement is a very interesting statement that Moshe asked Hashem. He says, during the week, we're going to remember to do the mitzvahs because we wear tefillin. How are the tefillin reminding us to do the mitzvahs? What's the tefillin? Why is the tefillin reminding us to do the mitzvahs? So you have to keep in mind, number one, that they used to wear the tefillin all day, throughout the day. We wear it for the morning davening. The reason is because we aren't as holy as they used to be, and they were able to concentrate their thoughts and their body to be pure throughout the day. And because of that, we only put our tefillin on in the morning for the davening. And of course, if a person isn't able to do that, at least they put it on once and take it right. They take it off. They say the Shema with it and take it off. But the mitzvah of tefillin officially was all day. Now, in addition to being throughout the day, meaning from the morning to the evening, but in addition to that, the mitzvah of tefillin is directing our thoughts to Hashem, and our emotions, our feelings, our love, our fear, our emotions, our heart. We're directing our heart to Hashem and His commandments. So the tefillin would make a person remember the mitzvahs, because if we're directing our thoughts to Hashem and our emotions and our feelings to Hashem, obviously we're going to be reminded to do each mitzvah, and we're going to want to keep the mitzvahs. The problem that Moshe Rabbeinu had was, what about Shabbos? Shabbos, you don't have tefillin on. Why don't you have tefillin on Shabbos? Because Shabbos is a sign, and the law is that you don't wear tefillin on Shabbos, because Shabbos itself, tefillin is a sign, and Shabbos is a sign. So you don't need the sign of tefillin when you have the sign of Shabbos, and ultimately we don't wear tefillin on Shabbos. And so Moshe Rabbeinu was concerned that how are we gonna remember the mitzvahs on Shabbos? And which really awakens us to concentrate more when we put on our tefillin. Of course, you do it, anything you do every day, it's very easy to sort of like, it becomes part of our natural automatic. We become like a machine, automatic. We just do it and get it done and finish. Really, we should be thinking the tefillin is supposed to also do what tzitzis does, which is reminds us to direct our. In other words, we're supposed to be directing our thoughts, and one of the important, essential parts of tefillin is really thinking, directing our thoughts to Hashem. The head tefillin and the arm tefillin is directing our emotions and our actions to Hashem. So that's the idea of tefillin. And Hashem says, "Don't worry, Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm going to give you the mitzvah of tzitzis. So on Shabbos, you will have a reminder to do the mitzvahs." So that is why it uses the word vayomer, because this is Hashem's trying to fulfill Moshe Rabbeinu's wish. This was not just like a regular command, but it's rather more of a answer to a request. Moshe Rabbeinu made a request, and Hashem used the word Amira, Yomer, because it was like a soothing type of answer to Moshe Rabbeinu. So what the Ohr Hachaim did here was he connected this pasuk in a hint in the pasuk, which is why it says Vayomer, to this medrash. The medrash doesn't say the Vayomer part. This is the Ohr Hachaim is connecting. He says, we have a medrash and we have a question on the pasuk. He says, now we could connect the two, and you see that this is this could be one of the reasons why it says Vayomer, more like a soothing type of a command, because it was trying to make Moshe Rabbeinu fulfill his request and make him happy, satisfy him. Okay, so that's the first Ohr Hachaim on this portion. Then comes the next statement of the Ohr Hachaim. The Ohr Hachaim says that right after it uses this initial introduction, it does say Daber, speak to the Bnei Yisrael and tell them. And the reason it says Daber, which is more of a firm speech, it uses that term later. Again, normally you would have Vayadaber in the introduction. Here, Vayomer is the introduction, but then it does say by Dibor, it does say the firm speech, and that is because it is a mitzvah, it's an obligation. And it says V'amarta aleihem, and again it uses the word amira, which is more the soothing type of speech or soft speech, because the Ohr Hachaim, we've seen this a number of times in the Ohr Hachaim, that sometimes the word amira comes from the word praise, as Hashem ha'amarta hayom v'Hashem ha'amircha hayom, which is that you praised Hashem today, and Hashem praises you. He lifts you up and exalts you, and that's in his tefillin. It says the special pasuk that Hashem makes us important, and we praise Hashem in our tefillin, and Hashem praises us. It says in his tefillin. So the word amira sometimes means praise. I'm just using that term here. The Ohr Hachaim doesn't mention this about the tefillin, that it says in Hashem's tefillin, this word. I'm just mentioning that because the concept is the verse is the source of the Ohr Hachaim's interpretation, and he says this a number of times throughout the Chumash, that the word amira is a concept of praising and exalted status. So Hashem is giving us that exalted status, that the Maila and Kavod, which comes from a mitzvah. Okay, then comes the next Ohr Hachaim, and here the verse says, "The asu lahem tzitzis, they shall make for themselves tzitzis on the corners of their garments." Now, what does it mean? And they shall make for them tzitzis. Shouldn't it be make tzitzis, not and they shall make for them? The and sounds extra. What is this and? And like a continuation of something else. Did it say anything before this? We're talking about a new mitzvah here, the mitzvah of tzitzis. So the understanding is that Hashem had the medrash that the let me start over. The answer is that the medrash that the Ohr Hachaim brought earlier is going to help us here as well. It's a continuation. That medrash really fits very well with the continuation here with this grammatical question, this issue of why it says an extra vav, which means and. So that same medrash is going to help us out here. Again, that medrash was Moshe Rabbeinu asking about a reminder on Shabbos for the mitzvahs. And Hashem said, yeah, don't worry, I'm going to give you tzitzis, even though you don't have tefillin on Shabbos, but you'll have tzitzis. So here, there's a vav, v'asu lahem tzitzis, and they shall make for them tzitzis. Now, what's the vav? So the answer is that Hashem said that, or Moshe Rabbeinu had initially told Hashem, during the week, we're all set. We have tefillin. And Hashem is telling them that I'm going to give you tzitzis. Now, when he gives us the mitzvah of tzitzis, what does he? There's room to say that, well, tzitzis and tefillin maybe you might think that they are interchangeable. Why? Because both of them are meant to remind us of the mitzvahs. They're both going to be reminders. And if so maybe you'll say, well, if you want, you could put tefillin on. And if you want, you could put tzitzis and not tefillin. So you might think that they're interchangeable because logically they're both about giving a reminder. And here the Ohr Hachaim says no, that the Torah adds the letter, or Hashem adds the letter Vav in the command of tzitzis to say that the mitzvah of tefillin stays where it is. Don't move that around. That's going nowhere. That's going to stay here forever. Tefillin, you always have to put on every single day, except Shabbos. Every day you got to do tefillin. It's staying in its place. And on top of that, you have the mitzvah of tzitzis, and that mitzvah of tzitzis is in addition to the tefillin during the week, and just happen even during the week, meaning even during the week you need both. And it happens to be on Shabbos you don't wear the tefillin, but you'll have the tzitzis. But don't think that they're interchangeable, meaning the tefillin and the tzitzis are both necessary. And that's why it has an extra vav there. Also, again, it reminds us of this discussion of Moshe Rabbeinu asking Hashem for a reminder. Hashem says, "Oh yeah, you don't wear a Shabbos, you don't wear tefillin, but I'm going to give you a mitzvah of tzitzis." And then the Hashem says, "I'm giving you the mitzvah of tzitzis. It's in addition to tefillin. Don't think that they're interchangeable. Don't make that mistake." So it goes hand in hand with that medrash. So that medrash, it gives us an explanation. Again, the point of the Ohr Hachaim is not that this is the only answer to this, but that medrash works very well. Now, there might be other answers. Again, the Ohr Hachaim gives this answer, and he explains it. It fits very well with this medrash that also answered the first question of why it starts off by Yomer and not by Yadaber. Okay, now comes the next Ohr Hachaim, and that is that it says that on the corners of your garment, you should make the tzitzis for generations throughout their generations, which seems to be saying that don't think that, you can get away. Not everyone needs this. It needs to be always. It's for all your generations. For their generations, they should always have the tzitzis. And a person might think that, well, the purpose of the tzitzis is for reminding us of the mitzvahs, and that is something that the verse actually says clearly, that the tzitzis is to remind us again, in addition to the medrash that talks about Moshe putting in such a request, but the verse itself says, Uzachartem es kol mitzvahs Hashem. The verse itself mentions that you will remember all the commandments, and it says also afterwards, the verse after that, it says, in order that you remember and perform all my commandments. So the concept of remembering the commandments is in the actual text of the Shema. And so if that's the purpose, to remember the mitzvahs, by seeing the tzitzis, it's going to cause you to remember the mitzvahs. So a person might think that maybe there'll be a very special generation that's holy, kadosh v'tahar, holy and pure, and maybe they don't need this reminder. Maybe there'll be people who are studying Torah day and night, all day and all night, not even doing any business or anything. They have maids doing all their house obligations, housework and things, and maybe they don't need a reminder to do the mitzvahs because they're constantly studying Torah and involved in mitzvahs and not doing anything. There might be a generation that doesn't need a reminder for mitzvahs. So maybe for them, they don't need to wear tzitzis. And on this, it says, that all generations need this mitzvah, all need tzitzis. They have to fulfill this mitzvah. So that's the first point that he makes, that just on a, per generation, you could imagine such a generation. There might be, people maybe in Mea Sha'arim, they're studying Torah all day, and the government pays their whatever they, or you could have it in other places. Someone's fully supported by their independently wealthy family, and and maybe they, or it could be a whole generation like that. That doesn't need, soon AI will do all our work, and maybe we won't need, we could be busy with mitzvahs all day and night. And so the pasuk says, l'doiraisam, for throughout your generations always have tzitzis. Okay, so that's the first point. Then he says you could maybe another interpretation. Why does it say in the middle of the sentence, for their generations, throughout their generations? It's like it breaks up the sentence. It says you should speak to the Bnei Israel, speak to the Jews, and tell them that they should make tzitzis on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and they should put on the corner of their garment, on the tzitzis, a blue thread, a tchelas thread. Now, shouldn't it say it at the end or at the beginning? For all your generations, you should have tzitzis, and you should have a blue thread. Or at the end, have a tzitzis, make for yourself tzitzis, and make sure there's a blue thread, and this should be for all your generations. But in the middle, you should make tzitzis for generations, make tzitzis on the corners of your garments for generations, all throughout the generations, and you should put on the tzitzis a blue thread. Why does it break it up with this word l'doiraisam, for throughout their generations? So he says, you know why? There's really two parts to the mitzvah of tzitzis. There's the white tzitzis, and then there's the blue tzitzis, which are the blue the blue threads that are from this creature called the chilazon. That's the Hebrew word for it. Again, we don't know exactly what it is. There's a lot of discussion, what the different research has been done. But so that's called the techelas, the blue ink, the blue color is the special blue color called techelas, and we get it from a creature called a chilazon. Now, the verse, right in the middle of the verse, is this, for throughout their generations, lidorosam, for throughout their generations. It splits up really two parts of the verse. The first part talks about the white tzitzis, the white strings, and the second part of the verse talks about the blue strings. And right in the middle, it has the word lidorosam, throughout their generations. So he says, you know what it's hinting to? It's hinting to the fact that the white tzitzis is going to be always throughout your generations. But the blue tzitzis, guess what? There's going to be a time when it's going to be unavailable. Can you imagine? The Torah mentions about this. In the actual Torah, it says, this is for generations, the white, and the blue, not exactly for all throughout your generations. You see, it's like a hint right there in the pasuk. You say it every day. You never think about it. But it's right there in the Shema that there's a hint to the fact that it's going to be missing. There's going to be a time which did take place after the destruction of the second.
Rabbi?
Yes, Bruce.
I am under the impression that for those who have to replace their tzitzis, there is one that has the white and one or two blue streams in there.
So what about the ones you wear? Do you have the blue strings?
No, I have mine are white, completely white. But I'm told that if I ever had to replace them, I could get the ones that are white with a couple of blue streams in there.
Right. So this is the thing. Even if you don't want to replace them, you could buy, in the first place, you could buy ones with blue strings. And it's not just a rule about replacing tzitzis, about having blue. Some people do have blue. They buy this questionable tzitzis that might be the right blue, it might not be. The common tradition is that we are not convinced yet that it's definitely it. So, if you want to follow that tradition, I guess it's okay. But it's not the accepted view. I'll just say that. You know what I mean? The accepted view is you just wear white.
If I ever had to replace it, I just wear a white then. That's all.
Exactly. You just buy another pair of the white. I don't know, but I'm guessing that they probably charge a lot for the blue as well. So it might just be financially as well smarter. But it definitely is not the vast majority of people do not wear the blue, because the blue we're not convinced that it's the right blue yet. So that would be my suggestion to you, would be just buy the white. Now, so the verse is hinting to this situation that we are in right now. It started sometime after the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash, that became impossible to fulfill the mitzvah with the blue, and the verse basically is saying that if you don't have the blue, you don't need it. It's Letiree is the white. Throughout the generations, you got to wear the white. But the blue is not going to make if you don't have it, it won't make a difference. It won't ruin the mitzvah. You'll still fulfill the mitzvah with the white, and the white will always be available. The blue won't. So it's the way the Ohr Hachaim is mentioning it. He brings in a debate in the Talmud, because the Talmud does talk about this. Does one depend on the other? Do you need both in order to get the mitzvah or not? And there's a debate about that. And the halacha is that it doesn't depend on each other, and that's what he mentions, that really they don't depend on each other. So halachically, even if the law is that one does not depend on the other, nevertheless, the verse still tells us what's going to be available and what's not. In other words, the question that we could try to think about is, what is the gain by the verse telling us this? Because it doesn't really make a difference in Jewish law. In Jewish law, the law is that if you don't have one type, you could still fulfill the mitzvah with the other. So in Jewish law, it doesn't really matter if it's Letiree or not Letiree, if it's for throughout the generations or not, because it's not going to really make a difference. But nevertheless, the verse tells us that this one is going to be available always, and that one won't be available always. That's what we see. So it's like a hint in the verse. What practical application do we gain from knowing this? I mean, the Torah does have everything about that's going to happen in the world hidden in there. So that's one thing that the Torah, you see it hinted by this verse, L'Direi Sam. Possibly it's to make us feel that we are acknowledging that we shouldn't feel left out, like our generation is not, we're lost, that we don't have it. No, in the Torah itself, it says there's going to be a time that there's not going to be blue. So don't feel that we're missing out in fulfilling this, that we are done, that it's sort of that it's our fault, so to speak. The pasuk itself says there's going to be a time that we're not going to have the blue. The white is meant l'direi sam, and the blue is not going to always be there. Maybe it's to give us that encouragement that we shouldn't feel, so to speak, left out. Possibly just the thought. The Ohr Hachaim doesn't really go into it, what benefit we really have from knowing this. But I think David wants to answer this. Yes.
I was going to say that there is a small booklet that's put out by Chabad about different things, about tzitzis, about different subjects, like in just a few pages. And the one about tzitzis, it mentions there that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe said that the reason that it said that one of the reasons that it says Ladora Sum is because in the old days people wore four-corner garments. That was like their normal dress was a four-corner garment. Mm-hmm. So he said the reason it says Ladora Sum is to indicate that even in the generations where you don't wear four-corner garments, you should go out of your way to get a four-corner garment to have tzitzis.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. That's a good insight. Thank you, David, for sharing that. What David shared with us is that there is another interpretation of the word L'Direi Sam, emphasizing that there's a difference that person should go after getting tzitzis, even if the tradition in his time is not to wear four-corner garments. You should, even if that's not the common custom of your place, you should still. It applies throughout the generations. A person should go out of their way to get tzitzis and wear a four-corner garment, buy a four-corner garment, and wear the tzitzis. Shkoyach, very, very good to know that, Pshat, because that's also a very important inspiration to wear tzitzis for those that are not aware of the importance of it. The Direi Sam adds a little encouragement to should go out of our way to get tzitzis, even if people don't wear four-corner garments. Okay, Shkoyach.
Can I ask you one quick question?
Yeah.
Are you supposed to show that you're wearing them?
So there is a debate if the tzitzis are the garment, how much of it should be out and in. Some people wear everything outward. So if we go into Borough Park, you'll find people wearing even the entire garment is on top of their shirt. And so you see the tzitzis hanging out, but you also see the garment. Then you have some people who wear the garment inside their shirt, under their shirt, but the tzitzis are hanging out. And then you have some people wearing everything hidden inside. And it seems to be sources for all options. So it's we'd have to pull up a Shulchan Aruch and see what the different opinions, but the common tradition, at least among I would say it's probably the vast majority of people, is to keep the garment under your shirt, and the tzitzis neatly. It's generally, it's you leave it out, but you try to keep it neatly. Yes, David.
One of the rabbis in Toronto, where I lived, used to joke that people that wore the tzitzis on the inside were making it dir b'tachtonim, which you can explain what that means.
All right.
Tachtonim, I think, is underwear, if I'm not mistaken. So dir b'tachtonim means
cute line, but okay. Let's yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Cute line. Okay. So anyway, so the word L'Direi Sam is hinting to this fact. The way the Ohr Hachaim is understanding it, it's hinting to this fact that there is going to be a time when it's not going to be available. Then the verse says, "V'haya lachem." The next verse. This is verse 39. V'haya lachem letzitzis, and it'll be for you. It shall be for you for tzitzis, and you shall see them, and you shall remember all the mitzvahs of Hashem, and you shall do them, and don't go after your thoughts of your heart, and after your eyes, that you may stray after. So, in other words, the tzitzis is supposed to remind us when we see it. It's supposed to remind us of the mitzvahs, and we should do the mitzvahs and not fall into any sin by straying after our heart and our mind. So they shall be for you for tzitzis. And that's a strange verse. They shall be, what does that mean? And they shall be for you as tzitzis. So the Ohr Hachaim says, what, this is unclear. What does this refer to? It shall be for you as tzitzis. I mean, if you have
It's
corners,
like giving
it is
them
tzitzis.
a
It shall
human
be.
characteristic.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's what it sounds
Well,
like.
let's see what the Ohr Hachaim says. So the Ohr Hachaim says that if you could explain this based on a commentary in the tractate Menachos, where it talks about the tzitzis there, and there's a commentary called Tosfos, and he says based on something that he says there, we could understand what it's trying to say. It says over there that there's the punishment for neglecting wearing the white tzitzis is more severe, is greater than the punishment for neglecting wearing the blue tzitzis, because the white tzitzis is a lot easier to get than the blue. The blue is much harder to get. It brings over there a parable. It says there was a king who instructed two servants of his to bring something. One of them, he told him, bring me a clay seal. They used to seal things with clay or with gold. So he said, bring me a choisam shaltit, some type of a seal of clay. And the other one, he said, bring me a seal of gold. So they both were negligent and didn't bring it. But it says whose punishment is greater? Obviously, the one who was supposed to bring the clay seal, because it's much easier to get a clay seal and to find it, to buy it, to obtain one, than to get a gold seal. So he says that is similar to tzitzis, that it's much easier to get the white tzitzis than the blue. The white string is very easy, and therefore there's a greater punishment for someone who doesn't get the white tzitzis than if he doesn't get the blue tzitzis, even when the blue was available. Now Tosfos over there, the commentary there goes on to explain this. He says, why are we comparing it to a seal? He says, you know why? And this is a very powerful idea. He says tzitzis is a symbol of like it's a emblem. The tzitzis is an emblem showing similar to what slaves would wear.
So
that the slaves used to wear a certain type of a sign on them, to saying that, this is my slave or that's your slave and so on. And they would make such an emblem for their slaves as a sign of their servitude. And tzitzis is similar. It tests to the fact that it's made on the Yidden, testifies about us that we are servants of Hashem. So the tzitzis is part of our emblem that we are servants of Hashem. And this is what it means. V'haya lachem letzitzis, a whole new meaning now. When you say Shema, you got to have this in mind. V'haya lachem letzitzis, it shall be for you as tzitzis, meaning that this will be a sign that you are Hashem's, you are a servant of Hashem, you are Hashem's slave. It'll be the emblem of your servitude. So now you say Shema, you think, v'haya lachem letzitzis, and this will be for you as a sign of, or as an emblem of servitude to Hashem. And that's what it says, that you will see them and you'll remember the mitzvahs. Why? Because when you see the sign that you're an emblem, you have a sort of like I guess a tag on you. You have a tag that shows that you're Hashem's servant. So it makes you pay attention and think about the fact that you can't just do whatever you want, but everything you do, you're Hashem's servant. You have to think of your master in all your actions and everything. Your clothing, your food, your speech, everything you do. You have the fear of your master on you, and what you have to make sure that whatever you do is fitting to what he would want and what he allows and you're performing his tasks for him. And it says, and don't go after the desires after your heart and after your eyes, which you may stray after. And what that means is that it's a lot of times the commandments are to go against what you really want to do. And it's very hard to withstand these type of temptations. But when you see your emblem and you see your tag that you are Hashem's servant, so you will be able to subdue yourself and make yourself do the opposite of what you really want to do. And so that's v'haya lachem letzitzis. It'll be for you as a tag, as a tzitzis, as some type of it'll reveal to you that you're Hashem's servant. And then it says laman tizkaru, in order that you remember and you'll do the commandments. And that is the way the Ohr Hachaim explains it, is in addition. Number one, you're going to be able to withstand the desire that's that instead of going after what you would want to do, you're going to do what Hashem would want. But what happens if you're already there about to sin? Here you're right there about to do the sin. And he brings a story. He says that from the Gemara that it says there was an incident involving a certain man who was careful to wear tzitzis, but he scheduled an appointment with a well-known harlot who charged 400 golden coins as her fee. And when he went up to be with her, his tzitzis struck him in his face. And it says he refused to sin with her because the tzitzis reminded him of his obligations to Hashem and the consequences of not fulfilling his obligations. And that's what it means, lama'an tizkir, in order that you'll remember and perform the mitzvahs, meaning that the tzitzis will remind you and prevent you, even if you're in the midst of doing something in a situation that's like a compromised situation where it's almost like impossible to prevent yourself. This is what it means. You will see some, you will do them, meaning you will withstand. You're in a situation, you're about to sin. And when you withstand that, it's as if you did a positive act, not just a passive thing of not sinning, but it's as if you actually did the mitzvah of sisamaisam. You will do it, meaning that even if you're in a situation where it's you're about to sin, you'll be able to control yourself. And then it says, and if you do that, you will be v'yisam kadoshim lelakechem. You will be holy to your God, and v'yisam kadoshim lelakechem. You will be holy because by withstanding such a temptation, you will actually be considered by what says when a person is holy when they separate themselves from forbidden relationships. And then it says, I am Hashem, your God, which is that this same idea that you are my slave, and this is a sign that I acquired you, and it stems from that I took you out of Egypt. And then it says again, Ani Hashem Elokechem, because what it's saying is, and even if I didn't take you out of Egypt, you still have a very holy soul, and that soul would bind you to that you should want to do the mitzvahs because of your soul, even if I didn't take you out of Egypt. So that's the conclusion of this verse. We're going to stop here. Sei gesund, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something. Have a wonderful evening. And oh
Rabbi,
yes, David, you want to say something probably?
yeah, can I share a couple of Baal terms,
Go for
gematrias?
two of them. Let's go for
Okay.
two.
So the gematria of Tzitzis is 600,
Okay.
and he says 600, and then each corner has there's four corners, which reminds you to whichever direction you turn, you'll remember the mitzvahs. On each corner, there's 5 knots to remember the 5 books of the Torah, and on each corner, there's 8 strands to restrain the 8 organs that habituate a person to sin. There is ears, eyes, mouth, nose, hands, feet, genitals, and heart. And if you add up the 600 plus the 8 and the 5, it's 613, which is a number of mitzvahs. It says, Urisem, and you shall see them. Gematria of that is 657, which is equal to the phrase Tzitzis bayom, which means Tzitzis applies during the day. And those are the big ones.
All right. Shkoyach,
Yeah.
very nice. Very nice. Beautiful. Very
Okay.
well said. Okay. Sei gesund, everyone.
Thank
you,
you.
Rabbi.